Are you an adventurer looking to take your hunt to the next level? Then you're in the right place. Welcome to East Meets West Hunt with your host, Bo Martonic.
Hey everyone, what's going on? Welcome back to another episode of the East Meets West Hunt podcast presented by onX. I wanted to talk a little bit about onX to kick this off here and go back to something I talked about a few episodes ago with using the different colored waypoints that you can use to mark different spots, and just something I've been using recently for scouting Idaho and can be used for really anywhere. But what I'm using with these color-coded waypoints is I'm looking at the map, and using onX, I can see where all the campgrounds are and trailheads. I'm marking all the campgrounds in yellow waypoints as well as all of the trailheads in blue. And by doing that, it differentiates it from all my other waypoints. So when I'm looking at the big picture of the map, I can see where the most common access points are going to be, and hopefully be able to tell me where the people are going to be coming in from, and I'm going to try to stay away from those locations. So by using those different colored waypoints, I'm able to see that. It's just another step in helping organize all of the hard work that you're putting into preparing it. So definitely utilize those features. And if you want to check out the onX Hunt app, you can either get the premium or elite membership for 20% off by using the code EMW at checkout. So check that out at onxmaps.com. The University of Elk Hunting, Corey Jacobson, and Elk 101 have put together the most fully comprehensive elk hunting course to date for beginners to experts and anybody in between. And I've had Corey on the podcast here, I think 3 times now, and I'm going to be having him on here, going to be recording with him, I think later this week actually. So really pumped to get him back on, talk again one last time before elk season, and September is coming quick. So definitely be looking forward to that. And if you want to check out the online course, it's definitely not too late, to prepare for the elk hunt, and think that really investing in yourself wouldn't be a bad idea. So if you want to use the code East Meets West, that'll save yourself $20 on that online course for a 1-year membership. You can check that out at elk101.com and click on the University of Elk Hunting. Maven Optics has come out with the highest quality optics at half the price of their competitors through their direct-to-consumer business model. And what I want to talk about with Maven is that the 2 pieces of Maven Optics that I'll be taking with me on my Idaho hunt, is that's what's in the near future. I'll be carrying my B2 9x45 binoculars. Those will be strapped around my neck at all times, and I'm running those in a Marsupial Gear Bino pack, and I've been using Marsupial Gear stuff since I guess 2016 is when I first bought them for my B2s, and not affiliated with them whatsoever. Just think that it's a really cool product. So that's what I'm going to be using those in. And also I'm going to be taking Maven's new S2 spotter, a 12 to 27 power little mini spotter. And this week I'm planning on getting out and using it to glass some clear cuts for whitetails, get some practice with it, and really gauge the low light clarity and, light emission there. So check those couple products out there. And if you want to go over to the website, mavenbuilt.com, use the code EastMeetsWest-gift, get yourself a free gift with any full price optics order. And lastly, Heather's Choice. I just got my order in from Heather and the team up out of Alaska. I got all my breakfast meals, the dinners, snacks within their packaroons, and everything as I'm building out my meal plan for the year. And it's great because they offer high calorie, high fat, high protein options to really help yourself recover and be properly fueled in the backcountry. So if you want to get an order in and want to receive it before September, if you have a hunt planned, I'd recommend doing that sooner rather than later. use the code East Meets West at checkout to get yourself free shipping on any orders over $99. And that could be really helpful, especially because shipping from Alaska isn't cheap. So check that out at heatherschoice.com. So on today's podcast, I have John Mulligan, and John and I are going to talk about a whole bunch of different things, but one specifically is antelope hunting. And the reason for me wanting to bring that up is because Montana's antelope season opens this Thursday, I think, and it'll start opening, throughout the West for archery antelope, and then get into, rifle antelope a little bit later. But I haven't really done any research myself on antelope hunting and haven't talked about it on this podcast before. So there's some helpful information there. And John gives some good tips of using onX and using actually their onX maps as chip card by being able to plug that into a GPS, and how you can use that in your car GPS to help while you're driving around glassing for some speed goats. So a lot of really good information in this one with John, and I just hope that everyone's getting excited for the season coming. Again, I mentioned it, last week I put out 2 episodes. I'm probably going to do that a few more times this month, as I got a lot of really good stuff, a lot of it focused around elk hunting, but trying to get that out and, so that everyone gets that information as, soon as possible. And be looking for some updated blog posts. I've Clint Casper's writing a piece for me and a few other things. So a lot of content coming out before we, head out on some of these adventure hunts. So let's get John here on the podcast, and hope everyone listens and enjoys it. All right, we're live. Johnny, Utah, Mulligan. What's going on, brother?
How are you, man? How you been?
Doing well. Can't complain. Another beautiful day here in Pennsylvania. What's going on today?
Well, it's finally sunny in Iowa. We've been much like the Midwest and out east and stuff, Northeast. It's just like been a monsoon every single day. It's just nonstop rain. But today was your typical balmy, 85, 1,020% humidity in Iowa.
Yeah, that's what I was joking about at work today. I was like, we either have like severe thunderstorms or extremely hot, humid weather.
Yeah, what's the deal? It's like, come on, can we just get something consistent and normal? But no, I mean, I'll take this. We need to dry out really bad. The fields, here I am complaining about food plots every day, but these farmers that are making their living, off their crops, these guys are in a world of hurt.
Yeah, I was just, as we're recording this, it's in the later part of June, and I was at the BHA muster in the mountains the other day, and one of the guys came from Michigan and drove over to Pennsylvania, and he said that like about 85% of farmers' fields had still old, corn stalks in it that weren't even able to be planted, because everything was so wet and flooded, right? Especially in the bottoms.
Yeah. Well, and a couple of days ago, I stopped at the gas station, and there was an old farmer, and he was talking to me a little bit. He said that, when it gets dry, they're trying to get into their fields and get their crops put in, but they have to kind of divide their time, because also when it's dry, they need to cut hay. And he's like, we haven't cut hay once yet this year, So, it's, they're trying to get twice the amount of work in that, each day that they can, and just long days, and they're not getting enough dry days to do it. Like you said, I mean, there's still corn stalks in the field that should have already had beans planted in them.
Yeah, no, that's for sure. And like you said, it's for us, it's easy to, complain whether it's food plots or just because it's the way the weather is. But for those, those families that depend on it, that's a little bit bigger deal.
Sure. Yep. Got to keep it all in perspective. And yeah, it is kind of interesting to make, to kind of sit back, and I'm like, dang it, man, I wish my plots were doing better this year. I'm like, well, yeah, but I could also not be feeding my family completely. You know what I mean? So yeah, it is what it is. And hopefully we get some drier temperatures, and, and everybody gets back gets back on track.
All right, John. So before we get too far here, I kind of want to get into a little bit of your background. Tell me about yourself and, how you got to this point in your life.
So I grew up in Lexington, Kentucky, kind of right in the central part, dead center, Kentucky. Go Wildcats! Big basketball Wildcat fan. I actually went to school and got a horticulture degree and thought that landscaping or golf course type stuff was going to be what I was going to do forever. Son of a plumber, but I knew plumbing was not what I wanted to do just because my dad always told me, he always complained about it every day. So I'm like, well, this doesn't sound like a good career. I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
Then shortly after getting into landscaping, which I had a landscape company that I ran for a lot of years, but one of my neighbors in Lexington, he was an undercover narcotics cop, and he just had the coolest stories. I mean, every day I'd come home and I'm like, dude, tell me what you did today. And he's like, oh, we kicked in some doors and seized a couple of kilos of coke. And I'm like, that's so rad. And he's like, well, you never talk about your job. And I'm like, I planted a bunch of eastern white pines today. It was boring, So he just had cool stories. And I thought, I want to go do that, And I applied for a couple of different police jobs in the state of Kentucky. And where I ended up getting hired was in northern Kentucky, just literally 10 miles shy, of Cincinnati. And so back in 2001, started a career as a police officer, and I think it was maybe the second year, a spot opened up with this. It was kind of a federally funded undercover narcotics unit, and we had a multi-county jurisdiction, and we did some work with the DEA and FBI and across the river in Cincinnati. And I got picked to join that unit, and it was kind of off to the races. And I'm like, this is exactly what I wanted to do, So I got to be Sean Mullins for a few years, and that was my undercover name. And dude, I mean, just like you see it on TV, like it was. It was actually just like that, just running and gunning and kicking indoors and buying dope and selling dope, and we did reversal cases and all that kind of stuff. But I still had the landscape company on the side, and
hold on, that's two completely separate.
Yeah.
I guess you were living two lives there, weren't you?
Yeah, it was like Cop John, Landscape John, and stuff. It was pretty funny, but what really floored my next door neighbors when I came out of the unit and I went back to being a street cop in uniform and in a marked car. My next door neighbor literally like almost crapped himself, when he walked outside one day and he saw like I was clean shaven and short hair, high and tight, and he's looking at me and he's like, Sean? I'm like, no, it's actually John. He's like, what the heck, dude? He's like, I used to call dispatch on you all the time and tell him my next door neighbor's a drug dealer. I know he is. And I'm like, I know. Dispatch would tell me every time you called on me. I, appreciate that. But so that was pretty cool, kind of keeping that story going. But so I had the landscape company going on the side, and always kind of been an entrepreneur. Whatever I was doing, I always wanted to have my hands in my own fate, so to speak. I knew that however many hours I put in is what I could get out of it, right? And the more I worked, the more I got, so to speak. So had my landscape company on the side and was driving race cars, driving dirt late model stock cars for a few years, and was hunting all the same, but was never like – I called myself a hunter, and I would hunt 15 days, 20 days a year, but that's it. And then probably like in 2004, I really got immersed into hunting, and it was something I looked forward to. It's just all I did all fall long. And then like in 2007, 2006 is when I picked up a bow for the first time, and then that totally changed everything. But I went to a deer and turkey show in Columbus, Ohio. At that time, they called it the Field and Stream Deer and Turkey Show, and I came across this booth, and there was a guy standing there named Todd Prignitz from White Knuckle Productions, and he was just starting this company called Wicked Tree Gear, and he had a folding handsaw at the time, and I thought, man, that's a really cool landscape saw, and he's like, no, it's a bow hunting, tree stand hanging, tree stand trimming, and I said, no, like this is a landscape saw, man. This is better than anything I've ever seen. So very quickly, within 24 hours, I was a dealer for not narcotics, for Wicked saws. And I was slinging saws all over the tri-state area, and then within a month, he's like, dude, like, what are you doing? Like, you've sold more saws than Cabela's has, this year. And I said, yeah, dude, I'm just selling them out of the back of my truck to landscapers that I know. And he's like, really? So that kind of started the conversations like, you know what, there's a lot of there's two cross category type things we can do with Wicked Saws. So I came to him and said, hey, I got to have more skin in the game. And he's like, okay. And at this time, Dan Johnson from Nine Finger Dan was actually involved with Wicked as well. And I said, look, I need to have more skin in the game. And he said, okay, I'm going to make you like my national sales manager. So we did that for a few more months. And then I came back to Todd again. And all the while I was also doing the White Knuckle Productions. I had started filming hunts and stuff for White Knuckle. And I said, hey, I got to have more skin in the game. And he's like, what do you have in mind? I said, I want to buy part of the company. He's like, well, I don't want to sell you part of the company. I said, hey, I wouldn't want to either. No hard feelings. Best of luck to you. I'll keep doing White Knuckle if that's cool. But I'm out on the Wicked side. And 24 hours later, he called me and said, okay, how much do you want to buy? So I became a co-owner of Wicked Tree Gear back in 2014, I think it was. And then 2016, I got a very strange phone call from Tecumani Holdings. They wanted to purchase Wicked. So Todd and I decided to sell Wicked Tree Gear to Tecumani Holdings under the agreement that we would go work for them for a period of 3 years. That's when I moved to Iowa. I moved to Iowa to be closer to Wicked because we manufactured or assembled and shipped out of Mount Pleasant, Iowa, and Southeast Iowa. So I moved to Iowa, left policing after 16 years, and just to focus on basically Wicked and White Knuckle. And once I got to Iowa, I kind of started, evolving a little bit as far as what I wanted to do in hunting. I had started enjoying the photo side and the short story side of things. So, I told Todd, hey, I kind of want to explore some different avenues, and I think I'm going to step down from White Knuckle and pursue my own thing. And they always talk about relationships, that all relationships end badly. Sometimes they just end, but at the end of the day, sometimes unfortunately they kind of end bad. And he and I, our relationship kind of strained a little bit because of that. And but we were able to kind of reconnect, and thankfully we were able to reconnect right before his death. And that lifted a huge weight off my shoulders, because at the end of the day, I mean, the dude, he really is the one that kind of got me into the hunting industry, so to speak. And he was a very, very close friend of mine for a lot of years and business partner, so that was a lot, but I've since left Tecumani after my 3-year agreement. And now I'm 100% Johnny Utah creative, and running my hunting show, Arrow Wild TV, and just doing photo content and marketing consulting, and still doing some product design work for some other companies.
Yeah, John, the cool thing about your story is, and that kind of resonates with me, I think it's awesome that no matter what period of time it was in your life, you might not have known exactly what you wanted to do, but you knew if it wasn't something that was fulfilling or something that you really liked, you changed it. And,
Yeah.
And I think so many people get stuck in, what's comfortable. And I'm sure that none of those things were extremely comfortable, and you and I talk about this stuff offline as I've met you over the last few years, we become closer and talk a little bit back and forth. Mm-hmm. And it's pretty inspiring to see, someone doing that.
Well, and and don't get me wrong, like with 3 kids and a wife, changing careers, later in life, so to speak. It's scary, but that's been one of those things about me. And a lot of it comes from that entrepreneur side. And I've always been a risk taker anyways, by nature. So it's so different than police work. Police work is safe, right? Undercover work was very much risky. And those are the things that I always seem to be drawn to. And I got the nickname when I was a cop. A bunch of the old veterans, they started calling me cowboy. And I said, at first I thought it was like derogatory. And they said, no, dude, you're just a cowboy. Like, you'll run into a burning building. You'll run into a shots fired call. You're not waiting for backup. You're just go. But there's always 2 sides of that. It was probably being stupid more than anything. But a lot of it was, the way I see it, the chief was paying me money hourly. So the more calls I could get to an hour, then I was a more cost-effective employee. So even working in the private sector or public sector, my brain always works on profit margin, being efficient, minimizing, inefficiencies. It always works on that. And when it came time for raises or promotions or that kind of stuff, that was always my leg that I would stand on. Is I'd say, here's my deal. I went on 200 calls, in this 1 week period, whereas the other officers were only average 120 calls. So on a call per dollar kind of, or like a CPM that we use a lot of times, in podcasting and photography and social media stuff, that's the way my brain still works. So making changes in life is just, when I feel strong and feel passionate about something and feel drawn to something, I find myself going for it and taking a lot of risk and extremely blessed that, I've got a wife that's been like, all right, I'll put the seatbelt on. Let's buckle down for another wild ride,
Yeah. Yeah. I'm sure. I mean, that's a huge part of it. I can't tell you how many people I've talked to and a little bit from my own experience, seen that when you have someone that doesn't really support what you're doing, that's not good. That's toxic to that. It goes both ways for sure. But,
sure. Yep.
I'm sure that helps a ton.
Yeah.
It doesn't help the risk standpoint, but it helps, having the backing of, her.
Yeah. Yeah. It's been huge. And, now, at the same time, when you go to your wife and you say, hey, we're not going to get any more of these 2 a.m. phone calls to go buy heroin from some shady character in a dark alley, it didn't take too much arm twisting for her to go along with the idea that I wasn't going to do that as a career or a job anymore. So that helped. But, leaving White Knuckle was risky and because I was having a lot of fun. And, at that time, White Knuckle was doing very well, was one of the first web shows that was out there, was one of the very few that was still successfully selling DVDs and that kind of stuff. But even involved in White Knuckle, I was the guy that was dealing directly with the sponsors. And again, that's the business side of it. I was dealing directly with the sponsors and saying, how can we better serve you? What is it that you need from us? And a lot of shows will just, we'll use your product. And because I'm super awesome, people are going to want to buy your product. No, that's not how it works. You know what I mean? So I would go to the companies and say, what are you lacking? Man, we could really use more photos for our own social media engagement, or whether it be ads or brochures or catalogs. Gotcha. That's the service that we're going to provide for you. And back in 2015, I got a call from Sitka, and they said, "Hey, we're starting this whitetail line, this whitetail pattern, and we're wanting to put together a group of guys, and we're going to call you guys ambassadors." And I'm like, ambassadors? I'm like, I've heard of pro staffs, I've heard of field staffs, I've never heard of ambassadors. It was an extremely long, like 3-4 month long vetting process. And earlier we were talking about Stephen Drake, and Stephen Drake, when he used to work for CCAT Creative, he was actually the guy that reached out to me first. And that was when I first met Drake. And so went through that process, and thankfully was picked to join that the Sitka ambassador team, and have been on it ever since. Like, it's kind of cool, be like a founding member of that deal, and along with a great group of guys. And now there's some girls as well that they've added. So that's been a lot of fun, and that's opened up a lot of doors. It's introduced me to a lot of people. But have you ever been driving on the interstate and like you're in the left lane and you're kind of in a hurry? You don't want to be reckless, but you're always kind of looking ahead, and maybe I need to go ahead and change lanes to the right so I can get around this car, and then I can go to the left, and then I might go back to the right. That way I never have to take my foot off the gas, but I'm also being safe and keeping forward momentum. That's my analogy for describing how I've tried to look at the business side of what I'm doing. Is I align myself with brands that I feel their marketing style and the message that they're sending aligns with my own personal beliefs and what it is that I'm doing. And it makes it more authentic that way. And trying to see exactly what's going to happen, what the new trends are, and that kind of stuff, and kind of staying ahead of the curve without having to stop and change who I am, because I'll never do that. I'm not going to change who I am, or I'm not going to market myself in a way and be somebody I'm not. But trying to always look ahead and see what's going on. And if there's any listeners that are, in the industry or wanting to get involved in the industry, that's one of the biggest tips I can get is pretend that you're on the interstate and always look ahead at where, obviously you're driving in a direction that you want to go. And for me, it was photography and short films and, sending the right message the way I wanted to send it, whether it be through conservation efforts and things like that. So I know what direction I'm going. I'm not getting off that highway. I'm sticking to my roots and sticking to my guns, what I believe in. I've just changed lanes periodically and kept the forward momentum and kept myself on the same road that I've always been on. Recently I left Lone Wolf Tree Stands and have been doing work with XOP and Lone Wolf Custom Gear. And somebody sent me a message and they said, "Oh man, you were a Lone Wolf guy for like 6 years, and all of a sudden now you left and you went to XOP and Lone Wolf Custom." I'm like, hold on a second. I've never left Andre DeQuisto. Mm-hmm. I've stayed true to that. You know what I mean? Andre was who started Lone Wolf, and it was his patents, and I've just stuck with Andre, Yeah. So I haven't deviated, and I haven't sold out. I have been extremely loyal, and I see the innovative side that they're doing with Lone Wolf Custom, and so I'm just still driving down that same road. I just had to change lanes once or twice,
Yeah, John, I think you make some really good points, and for anyone listening that, I see it more often now than ever as far as like people's motives, or maybe not even their motives, but their thought process on trying to, get into the industry or work with certain companies is kind of ass backwards from the standpoint. Like I'm not going to obviously mention any names, but I had someone message me and say, "Hey man, how'd you get working with Prime? I'm right now on X company's staff, but I'm talking to this one. I want to see what Prime's got going on." I'm like, red flag already. I was like, man, I went into dad mode, even though I'm not a dad, but I was just like, man, I said I worked at an archery shop for 3 years. I could shoot whatever bow I wanted to. I shot Matthews for a bunch of years, and I picked up a Prime. I liked it. I shot it. I used it. And after using that and getting to know the people behind the company, as I got to know all the companies, Prime was a great fit for me, and they made awesome bows. That's how we started working together. It had nothing to do with I'm going to reach out and fill out an application for a staff for a company that so I can say I have an affiliation with somebody.
Correct.
Yep. And I think if any advice can go out to that, like there's nothing wrong with working with companies. That's great. That's awesome. And if you can do that, that's cool. But make sure it's the right reasonings behind it, and that you have something to offer to them is the biggest thing. Just going out and saying, hey, I'd love to do this. I have X amount of followers or this, or I could go down a rabbit hole and try not to. But just like
I'm sitting there waiting. I'm going, oh, is he getting ready to crack this can of worms?
I don't know. No, I just want to just basically saying that that's not the main thing. And I've went through learning curves with it and figuring it out myself. I'm not saying that, it's something I've always been perfect with or had the right mindset on. But once you got to realize that if they want to use you for something or to help you out, it's got to be because they're getting a bigger benefit from it.
Correct.
They have to have a bigger return on investment. And so, reaching out like you were talking earlier, what can I do for you? Where are you lacking? Here are my skills that I developed over years of working at this. This is what I can offer for you, and that's just that wasn't something I was planning on, really talking about here, but I think it's an important thing to kind of get out there. And so you don't set up, the industry is so small and you don't want to set up a bad name for yourself.
Correct. Yeah. And that's super, super important. I mean, Todd was a huge coach for me in that, he used to tell me, he's like, do you think the hunting industry is big? I'm like, it's huge, oh my God, it's so big. And then I got involved in it. And when I say got involved, I got in it on the manufacturing side. Mm-hmm. So interesting enough, I was the guy that people were sending their media kits to, and I got to evaluate people. I got to meet all the manufacturers as a manufacturer. So when I met them, I literally had a handout. Hey, nice to meet you. Not a handout with the palm facing up. Yeah. So that was my first impression with a lot of people, and people got to meet me from that, and that went a long way. And then, like I said, getting to see other media kits that came in, and people are like, basically, I'm the shit and you should give me some free stuff. And I'm like, really? Like, that's your pitch? So it's kind of like going to the bar and seeing the single guy repeatedly throw his A game, at some chick, and you're like, oh, dude, stop. It's not working. So I got to see a lot of that stuff. And again, that was kind of getting to look in behind the curtain, and see the show okay, that's not how I need to do this. So I got to learn a lot on the business side, from that. And a lot of it was just gut feeling too. I did not own a camera until 2015. And when I say I didn't own a camera, I did not own a camera. I mean, my parents had a Polaroid when I was growing up. I bought my first DSLR in 2015, in the summer of 2015. The day that Sitka called and said, congrats, you're one of our ambassadors. I'm like, man, they do a lot of photography. I probably need to buy a photo and learn how to use it so I can try to step up my game to help that company in their marketing efforts. Not to make a name for myself, but I want to do a quality job for them, showing this new Whitetail line, once we kick this thing off. So I literally went to Best Buy and I'm like, hey, dude, I need to make an investment. I cannot believe I'm getting ready to drop this kind of coin, but I bought a DSLR and 100% self-taught. I mean, I went to a couple of photographers, and maybe if I went to other people or asked the right people, maybe I would have gotten more assistance, but it's not in my nature. So I literally did a lot of YouTube tutorials, but mostly I turned the camera to manual mode and manual focus and never took it off for the first year. And it forced me to learn every in and out of that camera the hard way. But kind of like that cowboy nickname moniker that I had when I was a cop, I'm like, I'm not going to ask somebody for help. I'm just going to figure it out on my own. And that's kind of the way I've always done it. And it's worked. Sometimes I've made a lot more mistakes than I've done good along the way, but it has paid dividends, because at the same time I don't owe a bunch of favors.
Yeah.
Either.
No, that makes a ton of sense, and like that was kind of the same type of thing, but like with the podcast stuff that I was doing. And don't get me wrong, you know, some people gave me some tips along the way and some help, and I really appreciated that. But I had no idea how to do anything with audio work or that, and even with a camera, like it was just all just picking up and learning. And I'm definitely not an expert in any way, but I keep working towards being better at it. And you know, for reasons similar, now with the podcast, are working with some other people, and I want to make sure that I'm, you know, the best, you know, customer of theirs, or however you want to put it, or a contractor to, you know, for that reason, and that, you know, no one's ever unhappy with, you know, what I'm doing. And also I just love learning new things and getting to see how that works. And I guess if there's another point that from my personal journey, like kind of to share, was, I think it was in 2015. I was just like starting with social media stuff, posting pictures, and I bought an entry-level DSLR that I still use to this day. I was talking, messaging you about, I'm looking to upgrade. But I just started that, and a new TV show that came out had reached out to me through social media and was like, hey, would you like to film with us and stuff? And I had a call with them, and it just didn't feel right. There were some things that were saying, oh, you know, you can't wear Sitka, you got to take that, and you got to wear this camo company. You can't do this, you got to do that. And things didn't line up, and I decided not to do it, and went and worked at an archery shop, you know, doing whatever I was asked there, and kind of went through it that way, and because it felt more like me. And that was, you know, it's one thing you should definitely take, you know, open doors when they're there, but they got to be the right, you know, somewhat right door too.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, and that's one of those things, like I've always tried to ask myself, like, is this, if it takes a lot of effort for me to change something, I have to decide, is it because I'm forcing myself to learn something new, or am I changing me? And if it's making positive changes in life, then sure, by all means. Not everything in life is easy. But kind of going back to the highway analogy, I mean, as long as I'm sticking on that same road and keep the vehicle pointed straight, then I know that I'm doing it all for the right reasons. And there's things that have come along that have changed my perspective, you know, the conservation side, you know. I like a lot of people, when you first get into hunting, I'm not thinking anything about conservation, right? I mean, yeah, a lot of us, we got into hunting, I'm like, kill them all, you know. I got a tag for it, kill it.
Brown is down.
That's right. And I mean, coming from Kentucky, shoo, like there's boys back home still green scoring a doe. So like, that's just the way it go. You know, that's just the way it went. And, but as you get more involved and you want to learn more and things change, then my eyes got opened up to the conservation side. And then, you know, through mutual friends of ours, you know, Sam Solholt and different people, you know, you start thinking more about the public land side of things. And I'm like, hey, I hunt some public lands. And I started thinking about things that I do. Like, I've never been into the woods and gone hiking in public land without bringing out trash along the way that I see other people leave. And it's just little things like that. And I'm like, okay, you know, I am doing this for the right reasons. I don't always talk about it, and I don't always post about it, other than if I feel like sending my message is like a reminder to other people. Hey, try to do this. You know what I mean? Like, pick up some trash, you know, help teach some DNR classes, you know, whatever, kind of help out. But it's not so much of a self-promotion. And I'll be honest, there's times that, you know, people are like, man, you should post about that. And I'm like, but I did it because I wanted to do it. I didn't do it because I wanted everybody to know that I did it. And people would be like, oh, good job, dude. You know, I'm like, I wanted to do it. So when I first moved to Iowa, one of the first things I did is I volunteered. I reached out to local DNR and I said, hey, I want to give a hand with the hunter safety classes. I feel very strongly about hunter numbers dropping. And if we don't get our kids kind of off of iPads every once in a while and into the woods, then we lose a lot of that heritage and the tradition moving forward with hunting. And let's face it, licensed sales is what funds, a lot of the stuff that we do anyway. So if we don't increase those numbers, we're going to start losing out. And my kids aren't going to have stuff to hunt, and hunting may change for them. So they said, oh, okay, that's great. So I went and I took some photos. And then it took me about 3 weeks to convince myself to post some of those photos, because I was that internal struggle of like, okay, I want people to be aware that I'm doing this because I want other people to do it. But I don't want people to be aware of it and think that I'm posting these photos because I'm like, hey, look at me, I'm awesome. I'm such a good dude because I volunteer my time. So it's all, it's kind of that, like you're on that teeter-totter, on that line all the time. And as to what's promotion and what's shameless plugs, I guess.
Yeah, no, that's true. And I can't remember who said it. I think it might have been Brian Call at one point was talking. I don't know if it was to me directly or if I heard it somewhere. Sometimes things kind of, mesh in my head. But he said something about, when you're posting something to kind of think in your own head, is there a meaning for it? Can it help somebody else, out? And yeah, sometimes it might seem like it could be a promotion for yourself, but if it can somehow help someone else, then maybe that's meaningful enough to be able to do it. And yeah. I know at the beginning when I started posting stuff on social media and everything, I struggled with not posting much for similar reasons to yours. A little bit, some of it I was just embarrassed to, because I'd get, shit from my friends and stuff. Why? Look at you posting pictures of yourself, yeah. Blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, dang it. And then once I kind of got that out of my head as far as not worrying about that anymore, just trying to, make sure whatever you're putting out there is not only tasteful, but also, in some way, somehow helping someone, whether that's through, education, inspiration, or whatever that might be.
Oh yeah, and that's a whole nother conversation in itself is the content and stuff as hunters that we put out, and I've always been the first to say I'll never cave to anti-hunters, but I also don't want to give them any ammunition either.
Yeah.
So no more of this, like, nobody needs to see like the super bloody dead animals or the deer in the back of a pickup truck with the crushed up beer cans with the rope around the neck that you use to drag it up the mountain with. Come on, take the rope off, get rid of the beer cans. You know what I mean? Like, show some honor to the animal and pay some respect, kind of speak, so to speak. And if anything else, pay some respect to just the hunting and the tradition. I love seeing those old black and white photos of the bucks hanging, and the dudes are out there with their flannel and whatnot. I love seeing those pictures, the old school style. But yeah, I'm like, just clean it up a little bit, And yeah, it is, hunting is violent, and I that's kind of the caveat, as I'll always say. Hunting is a very violent sport. Like, you're sending a sharp object into the vitals of an animal to kill them. You know what I mean? But when we're talking about the hunt and showing the photos of the hunt, like, we don't have to be vampires. You know what I mean? Like, just do it cleanly,
Yeah. No, I completely agree with that, man. And your points on that are just like, I've talked about it a lot on the podcast with other guests and everything too, but I don't think it can be stressed enough from that standpoint. If you look at the numbers that we're losing hunters, and I had someone send me a message or comment on Instagram and say, hunter numbers in Colorado, I'm seeing more and more every single year. They're not going down. Well, maybe right. That's your little area that you might see, and in reality, it's still dropping. Like,
yeah, there was a thing that I read from QDMA. It's probably a year and a half old information, but I'm sure it's still very pertinent and pretty accurate. 10 years ago, the average hunter was 37 years old. That was a QDMA member. Today, the average age of a QDMA member is 47.
Wow. So showing that it's not It's
zero.
Yeah.
Zero new recruitment is basically what that's saying. That's scary. That's not good. Now, there is several new organizations and conservation groups that have come on the map, and hopefully they're going and getting more involved with like the BHAs and the 2% for conservations and stuff like that. But QDMA and NWTF, those are two big ones that have been around a long time. So it is kind of scary in that aspect to think that we're not recruiting, new hunters. And just recently, like very, very recently, G5 Prime Quest, they recently sent my two sons a couple of the new Quest youth bows, and I've been struggling with it because I'm like, I've got a 10-year-old and a 13-year-old boy, and I'm thinking to myself, how in the world are these kids not deer killers? You know what I mean? Like, how can you live in my house and not be a hunter, a bow hunter at that? And it's just something that they've never really taken an interest to. They've been on some tracks and they've gone out checking trail cameras and stuff, but I think they mostly just like to ride on the side-by-side. They've never really gotten into it, and I've never pushed it. I've never forced it on them. And kind of almost a last-ditch effort. I got the two bows in from Quest. We unboxed them. The joy on their faces was like so unbelievable. We immediately went and got them sighted in, and they shot them the first day that we sighted in, and then we came back to the house. We shot the other day in between rainstorms, and at 15 yards, only their second session, they're hitting a little turkey target, a little turkey Reinhardt target, at 15 yards with their bows, and and I'm like, this is awesome, and I'm like, is this fun? And they're like, this is so much friggin' fun. We had no idea. And I'm like, oh, thank you, Lord. You know what I mean? I was like, they love it. They genuinely love it. So it's fun for me to see how this is going to evolve. And I have to like take baby steps because, of course, I'm thinking, okay, you've shot a bow twice. All right, it's time to go get camo. We're getting licensed this fall. We're going hunting. And we'll take it baby steps, make sure that they enjoy shooting their bow. And then if they express interest in wanting to go hunt, then, we'll cross that bridge when we get there. But it's exciting times, Bo. I tell you, very exciting times ahead.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm excited for one day when I have kids to be able to do that too. And I'm sure that can be nerve-wracking because I have not experienced that, but in my mind, I feel like I'd be the same way as you I'm not going to push them in any direction, but hopefully show it in a positive light.
What if they kill a bigger buck than me? That's what I'm afraid of.
Oh, that could be a problem.
It's so funny. I mean, there's always that competitive side. I mean,
yeah.
I can already tell you, foreshadowing, looking into the future here. The day that I'm with my sons and they harvest their first animal, I'll be like a blubbering idiot. Like I'll be bawling. I guarantee it,
Yeah. And I can imagine. I mean, I remember when I was 13 years old, I was out with my dad and I killed my first buck at 12. It was a spike. And at 13, I killed a big 8-point. It was like 21 inches wide. And at that time in Pennsylvania, that was like the biggest around. I took second in the big buck contest in the area and all this stuff. And everyone's like, at that time, but actually my dad killed one bigger that year in archery. But up until that point, that would have been bigger than any of his deer, and I'm sure he was so happy for me. But at the same time, it was probably like, what the hell? This guy comes in and doesn't know anything, and he goes out and he's spoiled,
Yeah, you little shit.
Yeah,
exactly. What are you doing? Showing me up. Yeah,
and
it's hilarious.
It was obviously all because of him, but it was funny. Everyone's like, oh, I remember people telling me this. They're like, you better feel lucky because that's probably the biggest buck you'll ever kill in your life. That whole thing. I'm like, what?
Oh, of course.
Watch
maybe. Yeah. It's funny. This past fall, I was in Iowa. We have these Casey's General Stores, and they're literally like every second mile, And I'm in a Casey's getting gas. I go inside to get something to drink, and there's a guy in there, and he's like, "Hey, come here." He's like, "I want to show you something." I'm like, "What?" But it's Iowa, so I'm thinking it's probably nothing too bad. I go out in the parking lot and they put down their tailgate, and it's an 8th grader standing next to a 189-inch buck that they killed on public land.
Holy cow.
I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. Just a gorgeous buck. And I'll be honest, like my first thought that came into my head was, man, enjoy this, Junior. Like, you may never see another buck that big, but I'm like, I don't want to say that. You know what I mean? I don't want to say it to the kid. And I was like, dude, congratulations. That is awesome. Like, that is a giant warrior, you know? And he told me all about the hunt and how the buck came in and that kind of stuff. So it was super, super cool. But yeah, in the back of my head, I was thinking to myself, I'm like, you got to be kidding me. Kid's in 8th grade. Like, he just smoked a giant, I mean, an absolute giant of a buck. But hey, and at the same time, I'm like, yep, they're out there, you know?
Yeah.
They're definitely out there.
No, that's for sure, man. It's funny how that works, and it's cool to see it at the same time. You know, hopefully that kid stays with it, and gets a drive in them to want to do more. And for me at that time, I didn't know what the hell I had, and until later in life. But
have you killed one bigger since then?
Yeah, I've actually killed probably about 4 or 5 bigger than that, because a lot of it has to do with the point. I believe the point restrictions and the way they've been managing the forests in Pennsylvania. We have bigger deer now.
Seems like it's really been helping out the state a lot.
A ton, like it's a ton for age class now. I mean, I truly believe, Pennsylvania has some people may argue this, but they have some of the best age class in certain areas. Not all areas are the same, but it has some really good age class, at least for where I live at, and they might not always have the right food to become or genetics to be complete giants, but we are getting those type of bucks now, and it's cool. And the way that I've done a lot of research into Penn State's deer studies and the way that they're managing the forests and stuff, and it's really impressive. A lot of people complain in Pennsylvania, specifically in the northern part, about there not being many deer anymore. It's tough to see deer, but it's all for a purpose of the way they manage the forest and everything else. There's more food for them now. The lower mounted deer they have as much browse as they could ever want, and it's creating bigger body sizes, then to bigger antlers and just older deer. And it's been really cool to see that.
Well, and this is not a derogatory thing to say, but when you're stereotypical weekend warriors in PA, you guys are down a day, right? Because there's still no Sunday hunting.
Yep, that's exactly right.
So your stereotypical weekend warrior is hunting 50% of the time already, and then you throw in some antler restrictions. Like, that makes perfect sense. I can definitely see the age class grow from there.
Yeah, I mean, you can't go by the mentality it's brown is down anymore. Before, if it was when doe season overlapped with buck season and with a gun, it was like it didn't matter. It saw brown, it was going down. Literally, it didn't matter what was on their head. You didn't have to look.
Yeah, and and during shotgun season around here, you still encounter some of that. I talked to some shotgun guys this past season. I saw a big group out somewhere, and I'm not nosy. I just genuinely like to hear hunting stories, So I see this big group, and they're about a half mile to a mile from one of my leases, and I'm like, hey, what's going on, guys? What are you seeing out there? Because in Iowa, bow hunting, if you're bow only and all your licenses are bow, you actually can't hunt during our shotgun season.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so you're pretty much on the sidelines. Now, you can do a bow tag and a shotgun tag, but if all of your tags are bow, then you can't do shotgun. So, and that's the case, for me. I'm 100% bow. But so I see this group of guys, and I'm like, hey, what are we seeing out there, guys? You're my eyes and ears, because I'm not out there. And these guys are like, yeah, we took a few shots at a few, and saw them running. We flushed them out, and they were running across the field. I'm like, yeah, does, bucks, what? And don't know. I mean, it was kind of a blur, but we threw some lead at them. And you're just kind of like, you know what I mean? You're like, okay, that's cool,
Sweet. Sweet. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm like, did you hit them? I don't know. Awesome. But we kept shooting. So, you're kind of like, and I'm not saying I haven't wounded a deer before. I have with my bow, but so I'm definitely not knocking, the shotgun hunting. But I am kind of knocking that style of hunting, just throw some lead at it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep. No, I think that's, like I said, I think that's really helped Pennsylvania out a lot, and it's still really not on the radar of a lot of people. And there's not, I mean, if you look at probably the bucks per square mile for other, like mature bucks per square mile to other areas, it's probably not there. And you could get a 6.5-year-old deer that scores 120 inches. That's it is what it is. But I enjoy hunting Pennsylvania. I like it, and I did put in for an Iowa point this year. I finally remembered. Because usually I missed the deadline for 3 years in a row, and
yeah.
Actually I was supposed to miss it this time. I was at Total Archery Challenge, and my buddy who hunts Iowa all the time, because he goes on years, he'll just go and do the muzzleloader hunt and late season, and he's like Johnny Stewart. I've had him on the podcast before, and he's like, "Bo, did you get your Iowa point?" I'm like, "No shit." He's like, "Get on your phone right now and buy it." So I did it, and I got it, and I'm like, all right, now we're good. I just got to remember to do it next year. Put it on the calendar.
Yeah, and it's there was one year when I was a Kentucky resident that I forgot to put in for my point, because it's kind of a short window. I think it's like 2 weeks, or maybe it's a month, but I want to say it's under a month that you even have that window to put in for a point. And I did the same thing. I'm like, oh yeah, I'll put in for it this week. And then I forgot. And then the next week I get online and I'm like, oh, you got to be kidding me. It's closed. Like, I can't put in for a point. I'm like, this is crap. But, the year I moved here, I would have drawn anyways. So when I moved here, I lost my $200 that I had basically, in non-resident points. And so when I convert from a non-resident to a resident, you just lose that money. Like, that's gone. Like, I'm like, damn, I can't like gift my points to somebody or something, Can I get a refund? And so of course, my buddies back home were like, really? You're bitching about it?
Yeah.
Now you get 3 buck tags a year, because you're a landowner. I'm like, oh yeah, I guess it could be worse.
Oh man, yeah, I guess that's a good way of looking at it from the outside.
Yeah,
That's
so
funny.
definitely could be worse. But Iowa's a cool state. The public land is phenomenal. I've been running trail cameras in the same kind of an area on public for 3 years now, and I actually got a picture of my first human this past fall. He was out squirrel hunting. But my first one human in 3 years. So it's that's been pretty cool, and there's a lot of terrain. It's a lot to learn. It's big, it's dense, it's thick. It's kind of hard to figure out. There's people that have done a great job and they've nailed it. There's parts of our public land that I'm still trying to figure out, and there's a lot that I've never even put eyeballs on, but. Iowa's a cool state, and when I first moved here, the big draw for me was chasing an age class of deer that I probably was not able to get on back home. And I'm not saying that there's not, and as soon as I say that, people are like, oh, bull crap, there's 6 and 7 year olds in Kentucky. Yeah, there is. Not as many, and you can find them. I knew with my work schedule and stuff that I had going on and the leases that I had available or that I could afford in my area, that it was very, very tough, to get on some older mature deer and stuff like that. But, Iowa's always had that going for it, just big, giant, mature deer. And that's what I wanted. That's what I wanted to try my hand at. So, moving here was a lot of fun, but it was also kind of like starting all over again. Everything about chasing deer, sure, they're whitetails, but they're very different. Kentucky, we had a lot of ag fields, and there wasn't a lot of corn and beans in my area. And here, there's a lot of ag, there's a lot of corn, there's a lot of beans, and there's a lot of fingers. And we didn't do a lot of finger hunting, back in Kentucky. We were, deep in the timber and going for more of the acorn, style bucks. But so there's been a little bit of a learning curve, but that's the fun part, right? Trying to figure them out.
Yeah, I mean that's a whole new adventure in itself, is going to these new places that are completely different to you, and I can relate when I went to started hunting Ohio for the first time, and what I learned there was in some of the areas I was hunting it was similar, like as far as big woods type style, but there was definitely more mature deer there, which was fun. And I'd say a little bit less hunting pressure at times, depending on what week you went. A lot of out-of-staters came in, the first week in November for the rut, but that was a big difference. And I started hunting. I had a small lease in Ohio for a while that I got lucky enough to pick up, and that lease was. It was all farm country, and it was only 52 acres or something like that. And that was so different to me because I had never really hunted ag before. And,
sure.
And just trying to figure that out. And everything has its own differences and challenges. And at the end of the day, they are deer, though. So you kind of try not to overthink it too much and try to just say, all right, deer need this, this, and that, and just figure out what you have in that spot that correlates with what they need.
Yep. And when I first moved here, a lot of the locals were like, "Yeah, we'll see how you transition in the switch." And I'm like, "The switch?" I'm like, "What are they talking about, the switch?" And that was when the crops come out and how the deer totally flip-flop and they do something totally different, than what they were doing before. And I'm like, "You got to be kidding me!" Just when I thought I had these things pegged, now they've completely changed their territories and their roaming areas and home ranges and travel ranges. And then you get into the rut, and then they're moving even more again. And it's been fun. I mean, it's like you said, they're whitetails. They got to bed somewhere. They got to eat somewhere. They got to poop somewhere. You know what I mean? Like, they're still going to do what they're going to do. But I've always said it takes a couple of years to learn a property. And every year that I've been here, I've hunted new properties. And this past fall, I finally got to hunt a property back-to-back years, and was able to capitalize, I want to say relatively easy, with, I didn't have as many days in the timber as I've had in years past, and was able to lock in on one of the bucks that was actually a targeted buck, and it all worked out. Now I could go 2-3 years and be like a dog chasing my tail. You never know, but and that's the other thing about whitetails. Once you think you've got them figured out, then, prepare for a curveball.
Yeah.
So, but, whitetails is not the only thing that I like to chase. I love chasing turkeys with a bow, and I've had a chance to, go out west and chase some antelope as well. So, I like the challenges of all of them. And I think different animals also, even though it's a different animal and sometimes a different style, there's always something that you can pull from those other styles or different animals that you can, cross over into another species as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's such a huge point what you just said there. I mean, that's what I've kind of learned as I start hunting different states and different species and everything else is, yes, it's not going to be the same, but you can definitely pull something from what you've learned there, and even different areas. Like if I'm hunting whitetails in the swamps versus in the mountains or in farm country, there's something you can learn and pull across that might help you in one of the other avenues. And I think that's huge. When you said that you went out to hunt antelope, I'm sure that was quite a bit different than your typical hunting whitetails in the Midwest.
Well, I had seen people go out west and chase antelope, and the animal itself has always been just a cool animal. They're beautiful animals, you know what I mean? And I thought, man, I want to try that, and everybody talked about how good the meat was too. So I'm like, heck yeah, I want to go for it. And the first year I went out there, I remember at the end of the first day, I'm like, this is dumb. You know what I mean? Like, not dumb that I wasn't having a good time. More like I would have better luck trying to get the ring on the greased bottle at like the traveling gypsy circus. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm like, this is ignorant. Like, this is absolutely a joke. I have no idea what I'm doing. You know what I mean? But it was like every time I saw a goat, I made a play at it, you know? And then I talked to a good friend of mine, Lyle Hebel, who used to be with Massive, and he works for Stone Glacier. And Lyle is like, the dude's he's an archery antelope whisperer, you know? And I went to Lyle and I said, okay, first year didn't go so well. I'm going to try it again next year for redemption. What am I doing wrong? And he's like, dude, just be methodical in your stalks. Like if it's a low percentage stalk, don't take the chance. Just, you know, you're better off making 3 to 4 good stalks a day than to try to make crazy things happen and go for 20, 30 stalks a day. You know what I mean? Just be strategic. If there's a place that you've got some coulees or you've got some terrain features that you can sneak up on to close the distance and get yourself within approximate range, whether it be 50 to 90 yards or something like that. He's like, then do that. You know, don't try, okay, if I belly crawl for the next 4.5 miles, I think I can sneak up on them, you know? He's like, because chances are they're going to be gone. This is an animal that moves 55 miles an hour, right? So they decide they want to run for 1 minute. They're a mile away from you, right? So I'm like, good point. So the second year I went out there, I was very, very methodical. I did over 3,000 miles in 5 days on my truck, but just did a lot more driving, looking at all the different pieces of public land and really studying the terrain features. Okay, can I stalk this animal? Can I get in close enough? And is the juice worth the squeeze on this one, you know? And so we spent a lot more time glassing and didn't do as many stalks. Now, we still had a blast because, you know, we went on 4 or 5 stalks every day. And finally, day 3, I spot this goat, and it's kind of off the beaten path, but I don't use Onyx maps a lot. But if you're driving spot and stalk, archery, or rifle hunting antelope, one of the coolest things to do with the Onyx little mini SD cards is to get like one of the old school, I call them like pawn shop GPS units. Remember the old school you can mount on the dash?
Yeah.
Suction cup. Take that mini SD card, plug it into a Garmin that'll accept a mini SD, and have that thing on your dash so you're not looking at your phone, because a lot of time where you're at, you're not going to have cell service, and that way you don't have to cache a bunch of maps ahead of time, because when you're chasing antelopes, you have no idea where you're going to be. You're just driving roads. So what it allows you to do is you're looking out your windshield, you're driving, and you can see like, okay, we're getting ready to come up on a public land piece. Let's get the binos ready. It's like the coolest feature about Onyx mini SD card that they don't even advertise. And I have no idea why they don't advertise. If anybody from Onyx is listening, like I don't know why you guys don't promote this, but it's huge. So I had my state of Montana little mini SD card, plugged it into the GPS, and you're just driving around. And as you're coming, you know, you're like, oh, in about another mile, we got a big chunk of state land or a big chunk of BLM or whatever. And you get up on it, and then, you know, you can see right on the GPS unit whether it's an accessible piece or not. If it you know, touches the road on a flat surface and not like a corner, because if it's a corner, you can't access it, you know. So as long as it butts up to the road, then, you know, you can just park right on the side of the road and just bam, go. You know what I mean? And walk right in. So that was a huge advantage. Probably my antelope pro tip of the year is that tip right there, actually. And so we spotted this goat crossing over from a piece of public onto a piece of state. And then right next to that was a privately owned ranch that was in the BLM as well. And so this goat is just literally, he's for the taking, you know what I mean? And this lady that lived at this ranch, she finally like stopped and she's like, "Can I help you?" I'm like, "We're not casing your joint. I promise. We're watching these antelope." So she's all about it. She goes, "Just park in my driveway. I don't care, do whatever you want to do." So that helped out a ton, but yeah, finally day 5, had almost all but given up, was on my way, going to head out and head back to Iowa, and a 72-yard shot. And I went home with a Boone and Crockett antelope.
Oh man, that's awesome.
Yeah. It's funny because I got home. I had been home for about 5 days, and a good friend of mine, Jeremy Myers, he lives over in West Virginia. It's probably not too terribly far from you, but Jeremy was like, "Hey, dude, did you score that goat?" And I'm like, "No, I didn't score that goat." And he's like, "Why not?" And I'm like, "Hey, I got a lot of meat out of it, and I got a public land archery hunt in first goat. My last thing was like scoring the goat, necessarily." And he's like, "Yeah, you might want to score that thing." And I'm like, okay. Eventually, I'm in the process of editing photos and getting footage sent off to the producer and stuff like that. And so finally he calls me like on like day 8 that I've been home. And he's like, "Hey, did you score that goat?" And I'm like, "Jesus, dude." I was like, "You're wearing me out with this." I was like, "You're more care about the score than I do." And I said, "So, okay, I'm going to score it. What do I get? An inside spread credit?" And I'm like, "How do I do that?" Like up to 4 times. He's only got 2 points basically on each side. And he's like, "No, you idiot. Like inside spread is not a scoreable thing on a goat. He's like, it's all just the total horn length, and you got the cutter length, and you got your mass measurements." He's like, "It's super simple." So I ended up scoring him up, and he made Boone and Crockett by 5/8 of an inch. And I'm like, "Wow, that's cool, right? Like that's good, So that was like the cherry on top that wasn't even needed to be there. You know what I mean? It was like an extra cherry on top, for that hunt. But super fun, had a blast. I want to go out and do it again. But it was one of those bucket list hunts that I wanted to do, and extremely challenging. We went in early September. The wildfires were going on, and this was the fall of 17. So all those wildfires were going on, and I wear contacts because I'm just too tight to go do LASIK, I guess, or that, and probably just too poor. But the wildfires, man, my eyes were completely bloodshot. They were burning, from all that smoke, and it was like getting trapped, in there with my contacts. And the last day, the winds finally shifted out of the west, and they came out of like the south or the east. And it was like crystal clear skies, and it was awesome. And it was probably like some symbolism, or it was like a message. And finally somebody said, "Okay, this dude's put in the time. He's been out here between 2 seasons. He's chased these things like 9-10 days now. We're going to throw him a bone here,
Yeah, no, that's that's funny. I hope that happens to me this year for elk. I hope the winds just change and they just everything works out. But with when you put the stalk on this goat, what are you doing as far as like how are you using the terrain, or really kind of is it a lack of terrain, or how are you doing that?
Yeah, where I was, it's in the area. It's around Broadus, Montana. So it's in that southeast corner, not far from Wyoming. And there's a lot of that area that's just very sagey, and there's not a lot of terrain features to hide in. The ditch is your friend. A lot of guys that chase archery antelope, they refer to like ditch dumping and ditch diving. And, you're in a vehicle and you just kind of, driving down the road, and the guy in the passenger seat just bails out. And whether, you do your best Steven Seagal, Chuck Norris barrel roll or whatever, but you dive out of the joker and get into a ditch. Sometimes that's the lowest terrain feature to hide in. Something also noticed about antelope is the closer they get to the road, the more observant they are to vehicles. They really watch vehicles, and we kind of use that to our advantage. Like I got into the ditch and the vehicle kept going, and the goat like actually watched the vehicle like drive away. And this is another like similarity to whitetail hunting. People have used this tactic for years. I'm going to get my buddy to drive me in the truck or the quad and drop me off and then keep on cruising. So the buck thinks the humans left. I can hear the vehicle leaving. Everything's cool, you know? So we kind of use almost a old school whitetail tactic. When you don't have a lot of terrain features to slip in, you know, on whitetails. A lot of, you know, open field hunters, you know, will do this a lot. So we did that tactic, and basically the vehicle kept going. I was able to get into this ditch that was you know, on public, and just lay low, wait a few minutes, let the buck kind of calm back down a little bit. And then I was kind of able to raise up a little bit and get a range and set my pin, and it was like, okay, here goes nothing.
Did you have to stalk him very far, or was he not too far off the road?
No. I mean, basically where I got into that ditch location and was able to raise up, and the truck moved out of the way, and I was there, and I was able to get a shot off, and really it wasn't the perfect shot. It was more of just kind of a center punch shot. But it put a hole in him, got him leaking on both sides, as they say. He bolted for about 30, 40 yards, and then he bedded down. But he still had his head up alert. And I'm like, oh no. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
My first thought was, okay, is the animal suffering? I got to try to put another stalk on him, you know, immediately. So, put another stalk on him, and basically I had an arrow knocked, and I had my binos. I don't have a binocular, so I had my binos just turned to where I'm looking through my dominant eye, and I'm kind of watching him with my right eye, and I'm literally doing that like bent over, half crawl, half walk, and I approached him from behind. And if I saw him start to look to his left, then I would kind of pan to my right. If he started to look to his right, I would pan to my left, and I just kept creeping and creeping and creeping. Did he know I was approaching? Probably. Here I was in my head thinking I was like a ninja. But I think he was injured enough that he wasn't getting back up again to take off. But again, if I could get in close enough to make another shot, that's what I wanted to do. So I was able to get into about right at 20 yards and put another arrow in him.
Oh, nice. That's a really cool. See, I've never really even talked to anybody about antelope hunting before. My brother drew a rifle tag this year in Wyoming, and people have told me about how fun it is, and it's just like completely different than anything else. And I think that'd be cool to get to do that. And you're talking about like the truck rolling type thing. That was similar up in Alberta when I hunted with Jim Hole this past year in the bow zone. Yep. We had the side-by-side would drop you off, and it would still roll. Like you had to get out and grab your stuff, and it never really stopped. And you had to stand there basically and wait until you couldn't hear it anymore so that the deer wouldn't correlate the side-by-side with dropping
Correct.
Somebody off, so that it wasn't a bad thing. They just, that always does its laps, And so that's a similar, type tactic that you use there with the antelope.
Yeah, exactly. And what's funny about whenever you were up there with Jim Hole, I was supposed to be on that hunt with you. And it just so happened that my daughter actually had a college meeting, and thankfully it all worked out because the college that she went to go visit is the college that she ended up getting a full academic ride from, and that's where she's attending this fall. So there was a silver lining for me missing out on that hunt with you guys. But on November 8th, while you were there, is the date that I shot my Iowa buck here. So it was kind of like, phew, I missed out on an epic adventure that would have been a blast. And I hope to someday get another opportunity to go on. But at the same time, I'm like, it wasn't so bad. My daughter got a full academic ride, and I got to shoot an Iowa buck, so I can't complain too much.
I was just gonna say, I think that all worked out good. That would have been super fun to get to hunt with you up there, and I'm sure we'll get a chance to hunt together one of these days.
I guarantee it. I guarantee it. Like I said, you and I, we both work with a lot of similar brands, with Maven and Prime, and so I have a feeling our hunting paths are going to cross, and it'll be an adventure.
Yeah, oh yeah, it'll be fun, that's for sure. And it's funny because it seemed like when we were up there, it was a really tough hunt, and I got to see some really amazing deer and everything else. But back home, I was getting texts from Pennsylvania. My dad killed a good one. Both my uncles were. It was just like it was one after another. I'm like, oh man, I'm missing out. There's probably no one else in the world that would say that they would rather be in Pennsylvania, hunting at that time. And I wouldn't change it for the world. That was awesome. But that's like my favorite week, and it seems like the week that I always would be successful in Pennsylvania. So my heart was torn.
Yeah. Well, and it was such a weird deal because I remember even when I got the phone call, they were like, "Hey, you want to go hunt with Jim Hole?" I'm like, "Hell yeah, I do." I'm like, "When?" And they were like, "November 4th through November 10th."
Yeah.
I'm like, "Wait a second." I had no idea about the college visit, but I said, "You want me to leave Iowa during the rut to go be in negative 25 temps? Are you serious?" You know what I mean? I'm like, "Is there any other week that we can do this?" And then, of course, I got home, and my wife's like, "Well, that's not going to work because we got to visit." And I'm like, "Oh, crap. Well." I'm like, then I was really torn. You know what I mean? Now there's an evolution because I can tell you right now, my grandpa, he would have gone on the hunt. He wouldn't have even asked if there was anything going on that week. My dad would have asked and still gone on the hunt. And it's something I've really tried to work on, as a parent, going back to the business and entrepreneurship and grinding and I've always been the one to put work first, work and then pleasure second, and as I've gotten older, it's something that's my own, it's a weakness in mine. I'll admit it. And I'm trying to not put my work or my activities in front of family activities. I'm getting better at it. I'm not going to say that I'm great. I'm way better than my grandpa was, and I'm way better than my dad was. I grew up in that, I remember one year I finished second in like a regional track meet, in the half mile. And I'm like smiling ear to ear. My mom's like, "Oh my God, congratulations. It's so awesome." And my dad's like, "What are you smiling for? You didn't win." And I'm like, "I'm a freshman, this is a varsity meet,
Yeah.
But that was kind of a snapshot of, my dad and the way I grew up, and which is probably partly why I am the way I am now. But I got to look like a saint because I didn't go on that hunt, and I still got to kill a buck.
Yeah.
So it all worked out.
It's funny. I think about it all the time is that's something that I'm trying to work on for when I do have a family, because I know I'm really bad with that. Even with sometimes I get such in tunnel vision of working towards goals and everything else that I forget about everything else, whether that's relationships with friends and family and stuff. And it's something I'm trying to work on and get better at, but it's definitely a fault of mine, and I recognize it.
Yeah. Well, there was that. I even posted it on my personal Facebook page the other day. It was just kind of funny. Somebody had a thing. It was like the real cost of ambition, and it says like you won't have a lot of friends. People will misunderstand you a lot. People are going to think that you kind of value yourself as more important than them or whatever, and for a lot of these reasons, you'll do a lot of things alone in life. And, it's kind of always been one of those things. Like I always remind people is, when you're really goal oriented, you're not an asshole. You're really not. You're just so focused on being the best you that you can, and achieving your goals that you've set, for yourself, that sometimes it looks like, that you don't care about what other people have going on. I went 2 years at my old house. I had really crappy internet, and I was going through Instagram and I was hitting the like button and scanning to the next, and, hitting a like button and scrolling. And because the internet was so slow, it was never registering the like button on people's posts. And like one of my buddies is like, dude, you're a jerk, And I'm like, wait a second. Like, my Wi-Fi is so slow. It's not. So literally what I had to do was, like, the screen would have to pause on somebody's Instagram post. I would hit the like button, and I had to physically wait for my little avatar, to pop up like I'm going to make a comment before I could scroll on. And we're talking like 15, 20 seconds.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I can't sit here and do this all day. You know what I mean? Like, I want to show respect, and I want to support my friends that are out there hustling and they're doing good work, or they're doing good photos, or they got a good story. Like, I want to, and let's face it, like, if you're building a brand and for awareness, like, that's how you grow is, the more likes you get, or the more comments, the more engaged people are with your stuff and whatnot. So I wanted to help out my fellow friends and people that I respected and looked up to. But yeah, I went like 2 years supposedly without liking anybody's stuff. I'm like, damn. Sorry.
That's funny. It's funny how these, and like I saw your post with that stuff on it, and I was just like, man, that's so true. And then someone else had a post yesterday. It was a picture of a guy like climbing a mountain, and there's people like pulling on a rope trying to pull him down. And the one guy says, you've changed, and another one says something else like, why are you doing this? Like, things like that are basically, sometimes the way that I feel with it. It's like, oh, you used to do all this, you used to come out and hang out and blah blah blah, all this stuff. And I'm like, no, it's not that I don't like you guys anymore. It's just not what my priorities are anymore.
Yeah. Well, and I had a buddy of mine, he called me out from back home. Now, I will tell you that this gentleman has not reached out to me in like 4 years, but he's like, oh, dude, you don't ever have time for any of your old friends anymore. And I'm like, look, they don't make any more time in the day. They only make so much of it. And it's not that I'm neglecting anybody, but if I have 10 friends that call me each day and each wants to talk for a half hour, that's 5 hours of a day that you're dead in the water. Now, I mean, sometimes you can do a little bit of internet work, or I can type some stuff, but I'm the person that when I'm on the phone with somebody or I'm engaged in a conversation, like, I want to give them 100% of my undivided attention. I want to be a good listener. I want to hear their story. I want to be able to add to their story, add to the conversation proactively and stuff. So I'm like, I can't do that. You know what I mean? There's just not enough time in the day, and try to hit my own goals for what I have for myself, whether it be through business or photos or, whatever it is I've got going on, and also be a better family person, which, that's a constant improvement. So, if anybody ever and I do love hearing from people, and I like answering questions. If somebody's got a question about what I'm doing or what I got going on. And, I always say, like, it'd be awesome if there was like a blanket response you could give. Like, I'm more than willing to help you. As soon as I get a free second, I will call you. If I don't answer right away or text you back right away, I'm not a jerk. I promise. I admittedly will say that I don't like it. Genuinely bothers me if, like, I find out somebody doesn't like me or somebody thinks that I'm a jerk or something. Like, it really does bother me. But at the same time, if somebody's reaching out because they're like, hey, man, this guy's hustling, he's got it going on, just know that he didn't get there by sitting on his ass either.
Yes.
He got there because he was busting his ass and he was hustling. So he might not have all the free time in the world. people that have all the free time in the world are either trust fund people. Hey, good on them. Or deadbeats. You know what I mean? So it's like, and that goes, there's all kinds of memes that talk about, a message for women. If you want a man that has all the time in the world for you, like, go to the unemployment office and like go scoop one up there or something. But
that's a good one.
It's, it is what it is, it takes hard work, and you got to work hard to play hard. And I'm a firm believer that, you get up every day and, you do your damnedest to be better than you were yesterday and somehow get more hours out of the day than you did before. A little plug, back in 2016, I did my first short film, and it was actually titled Work More Hours. If anybody wants to try to find it, they can. It's also, you can find it on Vimeo and YouTube under the title Work More Hours, or I Wasn't Always a Hunter. But it was a short film I did about me and my dad, and it was kind of that style of how I grew up and how he always just used to tell me, you just got to work more hours. You know what I mean? Like, if whatever you want to do in life, there's not a get rich quick scheme. There's not a shortcut to anything that's going to last anyways or be meaningful. The only way to do it, the best way to do it, is just to simply work more hours.
So yeah, who put that film out? Was it something that you released, or was it a company?
Yep, no, it was something I released. I mean, I worked with the same editor that I've worked with for 3 years now, Wade James, Ad Live Collective.
Wade's the man.
Another PA boy. Yep. Wade is he's the Wizard of Oz for me, and I do all my own photo stuff and editing stuff, and then if it's a really short clip, I'll do the edit on. But if it's an episode for Arrow Wild or it's one of my short films, Wade does all my editing for me, and him and we've worked together so long, and we're such good friends that. Before I would send him footage and with a storyline or the voiceover or the script or whatever, and say, okay, this is how I want this laid out. I want this laid out, this laid out. Now I can literally send him an SD card without even telling him it's coming. And, like I said, we've worked together so long. He knows the message that I'm wanting to put out, and, our styles, there's a lot of similarities in our styles. So I think it comes very naturally for him as well to edit my stuff. And, we work together very, very well. And as long as he'll keep editing my stuff, he'll be my editor forever,
Yeah. No, that's awesome. Wade's a really good dude.
He is.
And
talking about somebody who makes you want to be a better dad, that guy, I was like, you're a jerk, dude. You're like dad of the year, like every year, back to back,
Yeah.
So he's super, super good dude and good family guy. And, him and his wife Tab, they are so friggin' talented. It makes me sick, like her on the photo side and him on the video side and the editing. It's unbelievable how talented they are. They really have a gift, and it's awesome that they get to work together and do their thing. They're in Johnstown, PA. So, super, super good people. Have a lot of respect for Wade. Always have, always will. And, I always tease him. I'm like, dude, you made me look like a star again, like, thank you. But he goes, hey, look, and he gave me a good compliment the other night. I wasn't expecting it. He's like, look, man, at the end of the day, like, you have to have a canvas and you have to have paint, so without those things, then the paintbrush is useless, right? So he's like, I can't make your stuff look good if I don't have good footage that comes in. And he's like, time and time again, you always give me good footage. So that made me feel good that I'm not making his job any harder than it needs to be. At least I'm trying to give him good material to work with. But that was that same time that I was I was kind of transitioning over to getting into more of the storytelling and telling, we've all seen enough deer kills. I wanted to tie in the hunting to real life, everyday life kind of stuff, and the crossover. And I took a lesson, from my dad about work and work ethic. And I have applied that to all areas of my life, including hunting. And it's done well for me. So I kind of wanted to tell that story. And I also wanted to put out my first short film. I didn't approach any companies about co-branding with me or sponsorship or financial or anything like that. I did the film. I sent it to Sitka and I said, if you guys like it, awesome. If you guys want to use it, awesome. If not, I'm going to use it. And Dennis Zuck was still at Sitka at the time. He's now at Yeti. And Dennis is like, hey, dude, this is killer. We're posting it. And they posted it on April 1st of 2016. And for that year, it ended up being like the fourth most watched video that Sitka put out that year. So that was kind of cool for me. I'm like, man, my first short film, like, it did well, it people liked it and it resonated with people. And who doesn't like a feel good story about, a dude and his dad. Right. Yeah. So, it played on the right heartstrings and stuff like that. But the back end story of that short film was my dad had recently retired, and sold his plumbing business. And he had a big retirement party we had a DJ, we had a steel drum band. Everybody was wearing like linen pants and Hawaiian shirts. Cause my dad, that's my dad. He loves like the Hawaiian themed stuff. So, the DJ comes up to me and he's like, "Are you Johnny's son?" I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "Well, we think it'd be pretty cool if like you grabbed the mic and like made a toast, like to your dad. We understand you and your dad are pretty tight." So I'm like, "Yeah, give me the mic," and I grabbed the mic and I'm like, "Oh crap, what am I going to say?" So the voiceover of that short film was the actual speech that I gave, 100% on the fly, no preparation, and just bam, spit it out. And so I look around the room and everybody's crying. And I'm like, wait, no, this isn't supposed to be sad. This is supposed to be cool,
Yeah.
And my wife goes, "Hey, you've been thinking about doing your first short film and you didn't know what topic you wanted to cover." She looks around the room and she's like, I think you just got your topic, right here. So that's how that short film came to be, and put some video footage with it, and yeah, it was awesome. And it was fun to do. And I want to continue doing short films. Every year I want to try to do one short film a year, and kind of make that kind of my thing, that I do. And like I said, with photography, just a firm believer. A picture is worth 1,000 words, and I really believe that. And I still, I film my hunts and I still film the episodes and stuff for Arrow Wild, but man, I tell you, photography is just, I just really enjoy it. I enjoy seeing other people's photos, and I like learning and collaborating with other people, and it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, no, it's cool to see you kind of go into that now that you're doing, full time with freelance stuff and everything else that you're doing. I think that's pretty awesome. And now that you said that about that short film through Sitka is definitely where I seen it the first time, because I don't think I had met you till probably 2017 or so.
Yep. Yeah, it's like I said, that was a lot of fun, and that was another one of those things. The Sitka ambassador team and that short film were probably the two biggest things that kind of, I guess, kind of put my name out there as like a solo person and not as White Knuckle. During the White Knuckle days, I was clean shaven, high and tight, and had no idea what I was doing. I still don't know. I just kind of fumbled my way through it. But, when a lot of that stuff started, that's when I wasn't a cop anymore, and I let my hair grow out and I grew a beard, and I'm like, sweet, I can actually grow a beard. Like, this is cool,
And that you did.
Yeah. So good luck me shaving it off ever again, or wearing another uniform as long as I live.
Yeah.
It's funny because we just moved and we were packing stuff up, and my wife's like, "Hey, there's a couple of ties in here. What do you want me to do? I'm like, send them to Goodwill. She's like, what? I'm like, yeah, I'm not ever wearing a tie again. Ever. I got no need for like a suit and a tie. Like, I'll never wear another uniform.
That's great.
The closest thing to a uniform is like camo,
Yeah, that's kind of like a uniform.
Yeah, it's kind of it's kind of like a uniform, wear it every once in a while.
That's funny. Well,
yep.
John, is there anything else that you kind of want to leave the listeners with here? It's funny how, ahead of time here when I talked, I was like, man, I said I don't really have any sort of like certain topics besides I wanted to hit a few different things, and I said you and I we could talk for hours, so I know it'll be a good conversation. I'm really pumped to see how this conversation kind of went, so thank you for that.
Yeah. Oh, dude, no, thank you, man. I love it. No, it's also kind of one of those deals too where same thing. Like I knew whenever we got on the phone, I'm like, we don't need an outline to go by.
Yeah. No,
we'll rock this thing out. As far as like any other information, like, I mean, if anybody's, interested in following along with anything that I've got going on, Instagram, it's johnny.utah.hunt. And Johnny Utah was actually a nickname given to me originally, actually from my old business partner Todd Prignitz, and it's a Point Break reference to the movie Point Break with Keanu Reeves being an undercover FBI guy. His name was Johnny Utah, so that's kind of where that came from. And Arrow Wild TV is my web show. We do the Carbon TV YouTube thing and, Facebook, Instagram, do a lot of prizes, a lot of giveaways and stuff, on Instagram and whatnot. But you can follow along with the episodes. We do about 10 episodes a year, and we basically start every year with the final hunts of the deer season. And then we go into shed season, turkey season, food plots, tree stands, more food plots, mineral trail cams, and then into the bow season. This year's a little different because we've normally just done whitetails and turkeys. But this year there's going to be some bear footage.
Ooh.
And in Canada bears and stuff like that. So we got that coming up. There might even be a little bit of fly fishing. I've got a little fly fishing trip coming up with Prime and Matt Zinger and Soholt here in a couple weeks. So that's going to be cool. And then also Johnny Utah Creative. So Johnny Utah Creative is my company. That is my photography, videography, marketing, social media management, and consulting company that I own. Johnny Utah Creative technically owns Arrow Wild TV, my show as well. But that's the parent company. And I just started an Instagram page for Johnny Utah Creative, and I don't post a lot on there, just a few highlight photos of some photo gigs or some drone work or something that the company itself is working on. But I kind of keep that more towards just towards the product design clients and some of the photo clients and stuff that Johnny Utah works on directly. But Johnny Utah, johnny.utah.hunt is more of my daily personal / hunting page that I kind of keep up with more, and definitely more active on that. But yeah, I mean, any new subscribers to Arrow Wild TV is much appreciated. There's a lot of work that goes into it, and people subscribing is kind of what makes it all worthwhile, and hopefully people enjoy it. There's something that's entertaining, and you can learn some tips and tricks and tactics and stuff like that from it as well.
Awesome, man. That's cool. I am subscribed to that, and I think everyone else should check it out as well.
Greatly appreciate it, man. And kudos to you, man. Like, you've done a good job with the podcast. You've had a lot of really good guests on there. I'm probably the shittiest, boringest guest you've probably had. So I tried to do my best.
No.
I'm like, I bought a kilo once. I drove a race car. It makes me cool. But man, you've done a really good job. And I've mentioned this to you before, and it was on an unrecorded conversation, but just to mention it again, I remember the first time that Bo and I talked. It was actually at the Harrisburg show, and I was still with Wicked at the time, and I remember we were cruising through the aisles, and you're like, "Hey, what's up, John?" And I'm like, "Hey, what's up, dude?" And it's always one of those things, like, if somebody takes the time to go out of their way to say hello, they address you by your name, there is value in that. And that's huge. And I remember making a comment to somebody, and I said, "Hey," I said, that guy seems like he seems like he's a good dude." Now fast forward, 3, 4, 5 years later, and we're recording a podcast, and you and I, we chat on Instagram and stuff like that and stuff whenever we can. So it's neat to see relationships come full circle, and I've never come to you and screwed you over. You've never screwed me over, and we congratulate and share our hunting stories together, and life is good, So it's neat to see cool things happen like that. Here we are. I'm in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. Like, that's 15 hours away from my house, and you meet somebody then, and you're still friends with them now. So that's cool.
Yeah, and I really appreciate that, for one, and two, I just think that it's so important to have those relationships and just always help everyone else, whether you're in the same space or you're not. If you can help out in any way, that doesn't mean that like you're going to come to me and be like, "Oh, hey, can you do this, that, and that for me?" That's not what I mean. It's just, supporting each other in any way it's possible, because when you help others out, you're helping them grow, and you'll grow right with them. And that's just, I truly believe in relationships and all of that more than anything.
Oh yeah. I mean, like I said, it goes along to the hustle. If somebody is doing a hobby that I could care less about, that doesn't get my juices flowing, but they're passionate about it and they're busting their ass at it, I can respect it. You know what I mean? Because of their passion and what they're putting into it. One day I was listening to Joe Rogan's podcast, and I had my earbuds in and I'm rocking, plugging away, doing some stuff on Facebook. And my wife says, "Who are you listening to?" I'm like, "I don't know." I'm like, "It's, Joe Rogan." She's like, "Who's the guest?" And I said, I can't remember his name. She's like, "And you're listening to it?" I'm like, "Yeah, this dude is like, he's like a bee harvester, like honeys." And I'm like, "It's so cool." And she's like, "What?" I'm like, "Yeah, I don't have an interest in starting a beehive, but this dude is so damn passionate about his bees and his honey. Like, I'm drawn to it, I'm sucked into it." So I can appreciate, somebody else's thing. And it kind of like you were saying, even if another photographer, another videographer, somebody might even be competing with me for the same, doing work for the same company, which is even more reason to support that person. But, who cares what the situation is? Like, if somebody's, busting their ass and putting out good content, I might not even like the photo that they took, but I'm still going to throw them a like because I know that they're a good person and they're busting their ass and they worked hard at it, So it's that kind of encouragement. No, it's not a participation trophy. It's mutual respect and encouragement for their craft and what they're trying to create, and I can respect that.
No, I couldn't have said it any better. It's like, so it's funny, and I'm not going to go down another rabbit hole with it, but a mutual friend of ours, Clint Campbell, he has a podcast, Truth in the Stand, and him and I were both at the BHA muster in the mountains, and we're like, "Dude, how about we just do like a co-branded podcast so we're both not interviewing the same people and, asking the same questions. Let's just work together on it." And it's awesome, like him and I get along so good. And if you think about it, we're both in the same space, looking, doing similar stuff, but that's not the way him and I look at it. We look at it as helping each other out, and I really respect the hell out of what he does, and he's super good at what he does, and I want to help him as he's, helped me out too.
For sure. Well, it's funny about Clint is, I was doing the Arrow Wild podcast a couple years ago, and without having good internet and I was so busy. It was just so hard. I had too many irons in the fire. I just had to give it up. And I enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun. But Clint came to me and he goes, "Dude, like, why are you killing yourself trying to do your podcast? Just come on board and co-host mine." I'm, like, "Oh, okay." So, I've been co-hosting, that podcast with him now for the past year and a half or something like that. Mm-hmm. And I don't do every podcast with him. I mean, I do like every other one or maybe every third or something like that. But it's a lot of fun. I enjoy it. I enjoy being a guest on them. I enjoy interviewing people. I love getting to ask questions that I've been wanting to ask that maybe you feel like a weirdo if you just walked up to them randomly, like, hey, dude, so what's your best tactic for this or whatever? Yeah. But in a podcast, I'm like, I can ask whatever question I want because that's my job.
Yep.
So no, it's fun. Yeah, he's a good dude, and like I said, man, you got a good thing going, and keep up the hustle, keep up the good work. I love, and not to turn this into a love fest, but like I dig the whole East meets West, because I'm in the same boat. I mean, I'm a Midwest guy that has ventured out west, and likewise, Wade has invited me to come chase some PA bucks with him. And he knows, he's like, look, the bucks are smaller. I'm like, I don't care. It's not about the size of the deer. I just want to go chase a PA buck. I want to try what you do,
Yeah, no, you're exactly right, man. It's the whole concept behind it, is, started with, East going west, but it's way more than that. It's, finding whatever type of adventure you want, no matter where that's at. And that's, I think anybody can kind of relate to that has that, adventurous mindset.
Yep. I like it. I dig it. Keep it up.
Cool, dude. Well, again, thank you for coming on, brother. And we will definitely be talking again soon.
Sounds good. Thanks for having me.
See you, bud.
Yep. See ya.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of East Meets West Hunt with your host, Bo Martonic. For more great content and to stay up to date, visit eastmeetswesthunt.com, Facebook at East Meets West Outdoors, and Instagram at East Meets West Hunt. If you enjoyed today's episode, please review and subscribe, and we'll catch you next time.